Welcome to Sane-ish, the podcast for people healing from trauma, addiction, abuse, mental health struggles, grief, narcissists, and every other flavor of chaos life can throw at you, and somehow still functioning, mostly. I'm your host, Holly Broughton, survivor, truth teller, boundary setter, and proud member of the Still Healing, Still Hilarious Club. Around here, we don't do shame or embarrassment. We don't do perfection. Just real talk, dark humor, hard truth, and a whole lot of hope. Because sanity is overrated. And healing? That shit is messy. This is Sane-ish. Let's get into it. Disclaimer. On the Sane-ish podcast, we discuss personal stories of alcoholism, addiction, mental health, chronic illness, narcissistic abuse, domestic violence, SA, HT, parental alienation, grief, loss, homelessness, as well as many other forms of adversities in life. Our intention is to be inspirational, educational, identifiable, and resourceful. The views and experiences shared are in no way meant to praise or condone any illegal or harmful behavior. This content is for educational purposes only and not intended as professional advice. If you or someone you know is struggling with any of the above, we strongly suggest seeking help from a qualified professional, support service, or hotline related to your specific issue. Today's podcast is about something that we haven't talked about, but I'm really excited about it because it's part of my story. We are going to focus on incarceration today. Incarceration, the first part of my life was not about incarceration. I had never experienced it before. However, and even in alcoholism and addiction, it wasn't part of my story. But when narcissism came into the picture, somehow it creeped in. And then parental alienation, it creeped in. But it doesn't matter. It sometimes happens to all of us. But my guest today is a colleague of mine, and she's very involved in the community, and she's a wonderful friend. And I want to welcome her to the podcast. Stacia Morris is here with us from the Lula Foundation. And I'm going to turn it over to her because she's going to tell us her story. And then she's going to, let us know about the wonderful work that she does with the Lula Foundation and tell us about incarceration. Stacia, well,
Y'all bear with me, slightly nervous, never done anything like this.
you will be fine.
Yeah. So, yes, let's start at the beginning.
Yeah.
I was born the oldest of what would become 4 kids. My parents were married when I was born and when my 3 siblings were born. And I remember very vividly, being being a real daddy's girl, right? I remember vividly, my dad coming home and, Dirty Dancing was real big back then, you know, and we had this shotgun style house, and so
Yeah.
I'd run in and he'd pick me up in the lift when he'd get home from work and, good times, happy memories. And I was very much a daddy's girl. And then things in my parents' marriage weren't going well. And my dad left. I do want to say that as far as, a dad not being in the home, he made sure he got us every other weekend, bought us school clothes, paid us child support, and that type of thing. He was never exactly absent, but in my youth, I didn't see it that way. And we'll get to that later.
No, Stacia, were you born in Texas?
I was born in Port Arthur, Texas.
Okay.
here in Port Arthur most of my life. I've gone some other places, trying to run from my addiction or myself or whatever you want to call
Okay.
it. I've moved
Gotcha.
here and there, but I always seem to come back to Port Arthur. It is home, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I was born in Port Arthur, Texas. When my parents split, they thought I was like one of those gifted kids, right? So I was like in that smart kid program. And so I would be bused from like our side of town to like the west side of town. Uh, and I went to it was a much rougher school that we went to. They sent all us smart kids to like a rough school. And that's the same time that, my parents split. And when that happened, our financial situation changed. And I don't know how my mom did it, but she raised 4 kids and went back to college on $800 a month, which
Oh
is
my
like,
god.
it was crazy then, but it's like super unheard of now, right?
Oh yeah.
Um,
Wow.
but we ended up moving in with my grandparents. That ended up being like this whole ordeal for me. My grandfather was a World War II veteran, and he was also a alcoholic. But if you ask him, he's a drunk, right? Because alcoholics go to meetings, and he did not, But
Hmm.
he was the kind of guy who, he would wake up drinking. He went to this certain bar down here from 2 to 6 every single day. My birthday, your birthday, Jesus' birthday, it didn't matter. From 2 to 6, he was at that bar and he came home and drank. A really heavy smoker, but also a lot of health issues due to all that. So, in a lot of pain all the time. And he's that old school generation, like, children are to be seen and not heard. And I was that kid, you gonna hear me. You gonna hear
Yeah.
me, And I've always been very opinionated, and we butted heads a lot, and that resulted in a lot of abuse for me. And also my younger brother and I. So there's me, and then I have a sister who's 2 years younger, a brother who is 6 years younger, and a little sister who's 7 years younger. And so me and the only boy took all the brunt of the abuse. And that led to well, I think the first like really huge event for me was my grandfather and I got into a really big fight, and like he flipped the table over at me, and we cussed each other out, and he told me, fuck you, you little bitch, get out of my house." And I told him, fuck you, I wish you were dead. And I took off, and I like tried to run away. I was like 12 or something. I tried to run away. It didn't really, I remember sleeping the backyard backed up into a church, so I slept on the playground, with a blanket. And when I went back home, he wasn't there, and I ended up staying with a friend for a couple of days too. My mom and grandma were like, "We need to let things calm down here." And when I came back, he was in the hospital.
Hmm.
I had plans to go see him because, I had a lot of guilt over what I said. And then he's in the hospital, and he died that day before I could go see him. And I carried around a lot of guilt for that. And it led to my first suicide attempt. But I mean, being 12 years old and very childish, whatever, not knowing things and whatever, I took every pill I could find in the house, like every single pill, and ended up, having to go to the hospital and drink charcoal and do all that stuff. But luckily, it didn't have any effect. I took just enough of this and that to counteract each other, and I ultimately was okay physically.
Yeah.
Mentally, that's where a lot of stuff started for me. I think as I got a little older too, my dad was with another woman. She had 4 kids. I definitely started to feel like, well, number one, even further back from that, like even before the thing with my grandfather, financial situation changed so much. I was constantly an outcast. I was the poor kid. We were so broke. I got made fun of all the time. And I remember when my dad left too, I was in that smart kid program. So they called it Summit. So I was like in the 3rd or 4th grade taking Spanish, and we were learning like the words for mother and father and family. And I was just crying in the middle of class, like, sobbing uncontrollably. And so I got made fun of for that. And actually crazy things happened at such crazy things happened at that school. I got cornered and beat up in the bathroom during Black History Month because I was a white girl, you
Oh
know,
my god.
Yeah, it was just crazy. It was crazy, you know?
Do you remember, like, when I mean, when your parents split up, did you and and of course, now you know it wasn't your fault, but did you feel
Yeah.
like it was your fault back then? No. Uh, I mean,
Uh,
it wasn't, but did you feel like it
no.
was? Okay.
No, I didn't feel like it was my fault. It was 100% my daddy's fault. So looking back, that's not even true either. But at the time, and so, you know, that was just rough. And then being like, I mean, we literally had no money. I remember like going to school in shorts in the wintertime because I didn't have jeans that fit.
Yeah,
You know, just, and my mom was doing the best she could, you know.
sure.
So we moved out of my grandparents' house and we moved to the projects for a little while. And, you know, that was an experience, you know.
And that's a lot for a little kid to go from a family to then a broken family to then your mom, surviving on this amount of money, then jumping to your grandparents' place, and then, then you having a rough time with your grandfather, and then your grandfather passing away. That's a lot.
Yeah, and then when we didn't live there and we moved to the projects, I was the oldest kid. My mom was working part-time, going back to school full-time. You know, I helped take care of the siblings, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
you know, and I remember us being like super poor, like, you know, splitting 2 packs of ramen noodles between 4 kids and, you know, making a bunch of mac and cheese and stuff or, you know, spaghetti was literally like a can of like diced tomatoes and some noodles.
right.
Yes. Well, and
Sure.
2, I didn't know how to cook, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? I made a bunch of stovetop for these kids, you know? And my mom did the absolute best she could, you know? She absolutely did. And looking back, I can see all the time that she figured a way to, like, save $5 so I could go to the skating rink with friends or what, you know, the little things that my mom tried to do to make us feel less poor, you know, more like we could be you know, like some of our friends were and stuff. You know, and at around the same time, like I said, my dad was with someone else. She had kids and she also had her own business. And it was growing. And they were like, I watched them, you know, move from an apartment into this big, like 4-bedroom house. And, you know, get CDs and clothes and all these things. And then at the same time, when it was my dad's weekend, we weren't allowed to go over there, right? And he rented this little tiny 1-bedroom trailer and we went over there on the weekends. And it's funny because he and I had a conversation about it the other day. And I said, did my alcoholic uncle stay there when we weren't there? Or did we trash that place like that every other weekend? And he said, no, honey, we trash that place like that every other weekend. And we had this discussion because um I was telling them about the gifts that recovery has given me and the
Mhm.
things that work in the steps have given me and
Mhm.
things that my higher power has shown me through that process.
Mhm.
And one of those things is I thought, number one, he was ashamed of us. He had his new family. We didn't matter anymore. And he was ashamed of us. And that's why he squirreled us away in this trailer. And I also thought that my stepmom didn't want us around. At this time, I don't think they were no, yeah, they weren't married yet, but I thought she didn't want us around, right? That and we were some dirty secret or something. And somewhere through the process of working the steps, I realized that that's not what it was at all. But my mom was angry and she was bitter and she would give him so much hell, like, "You have my children going to that woman's house where you're living in sin. You are not married, blah, 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 blah." And all my dad was trying to do was see his kids and keep the peace.
Is that what happened?
Mhm. But my 12-year-old
Really?
eyes didn't see that. And no
Yeah.
one told me that.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm a kid. You don't need to tell me that. You know what I'm saying? That's a
Yeah, yeah.
whatever. But
Sure.
I still for years, never really it's literally when I was working steps, like, when I got out of prison that I realized this.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I didn't. And I held a resentment against my dad and my stepmom and even my step siblings who I was close to, but there was still this buried resentment about that, you know?
Yeah.
And so by the time all this was happening, I was smoking cigarettes, I was smoking weed.
And this was like when? Like what at what point in high in like
Eighth
like
grade, eighth grade, something like that, seventh, eighth grade.
okay.
Yeah, around there. And then by the time I was in the ninth grade, I was popping pills, dropping acid. By the time I was, probably 17 and a junior, tried cocaine, and by the time I was a senior, I had a daily cocaine habit. Um,
Good job.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I really think the only thing that kept me as sane as it did through that time was I was in theater and I loved theater. That was a big thing for me. I competed in every like UIL and one act play from middle school through high school. Ultimately looking back, like theater kids are a certain brand of people
Yeah.
and those are my people. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, I loved being on stage because it was like this moment in time that I don't have to be me. This moment in time that I can completely be someone else. But I don't think I realized that till pretty recently. Um,
Yeah.
like by the time I was a senior, I was sneaking out of drama practice to go snort lines and whatever. And I ended up in a relationship with a guy who's extremely abusive and controlling. So my dumbass, we move in together as soon as I graduate because I'm fucking brilliant, right? You know, he was already like not allowing me to so he worked with guys that I went to high school with and that I had been friends with for like since middle school. He worked with a group of them at this lube shop and he would bring me around them with everybody like smoking weed and a party and whatever. And I was expected to sit there with my legs crossed Indian style, hands in my lap and my head down. And yeah. So
Was he older? Was he an older
like
guy?
3 years, like 3 or 4.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. But, he had already, like, done time as a juvenile and then into adult prison, and that kind of messed him up a little bit. And so I snatched him up as soon as he got out, you know?
So he already had a resume.
Yeah,
So
yeah, and
yeah.
because, I found I found that, um one of the ways I like to bring chaos into my life is by toxic relationships because, you look
Here
like the bad idea.
here hello.
Yeah. So, and we ended up living in this house that I used a bunch of graduation money to get us, and it was terrible. And then actually went to work for my stepmom for a while.
Mm.
And, not very long because I worked with my stepbrother and a couple of his friends, and by God, that was not gonna work, you know? And so, I think I still to this day believe at one point he sabotaged my car so I couldn't get to work, and, I ended up not working and just being like a prisoner, like, we had a snow cone stand across the street, and I had to call him at work and tell him, "I'm gonna walk across the street and get a snow cone." This is, like, before cell phones and stuff, or well, they had them, but they were, like, this big.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I had to call him when I got back from getting a snow cone to let him know I was back. It was, like, terrible. One day, it was so crazy. I had a surgery. Like, I've had, like, female problems my whole life and endometriosis and stuff like that. So, I had a surgery for that, and I was on painkillers, which I really didn't do that much at that time. It was cocaine, a lot of cocaine, and I was trying to heal from surgery, and he wanted to have sex, and I told him, "I can't do that right now," and he
Mhm.
got so mad at me. He took half a bottle or took the rest of my painkillers with half a bottle of tequila, smashed the rest of the bottle over his own head, picked up the couch, threw it at the wall, picked up a recliner, threw it at me. I ended up in the hospital for 3 days after that night. I knew I had to leave. I knew, but I also knew that if I tried to leave, he was gonna kill me.
Yeah.
Like, I knew it in my bones. And so I went back home when I got out of the hospital, and I stayed there for about 2 months, planning my escape. And I did finally leave, and when I did, he came over to my grandma's house. I went back to my grandma's, and he came over to my grandma's house, and he had my name carved into one arm, death carved into the other, ripped my stereo out of my car and beat it in the street with a baseball bat, slammed me up against the house a couple times till in front of my little sister, until my grandma came out there and stopped him. And then he left. And, I saw him years later. He tried to apologize, but I didn't see him again at that time. But then it also ostracized me even further from friends because he still hung out with.
Yeah.
So I do want to back up a little bit though and talk about my relationship with my step siblings. Right.
Okay. Sure. Sure.
Because through high school, my stepbrother and I got very, very close. My stepsister and I too, to an extent, but she was like one of those preppy kids, like trying out for Indianettes, like drill team and all that stuff.
Mhm.
And my stepbrother and I were heavy metal and punk concerts and all that, right? And so he and I became really close every other weekend. We spent, the whole weekend together. There was a pool hall in our hometown, or well, his hometown, Port Neches, not Port Arthur, but it was made for teenagers, for underage people. They didn't serve alcohol. The old man that owned it let us bring our own CDs and put them in the jukebox. And it was just something where kids could go and not get in trouble, right? And we lived at this pool hall. It was called Mooney's. We absolutely lived there. It's where all the little goth freak kids went to play. And that was just like a big part of my childhood during like high school. And my relationship with my brother, like, we would throw parties at my parents' house when they were out of town and do all this stuff together. But that was a big part. And he also introduced me to a lot of music that I still listen to today. And that that place and those times with him in my mind are some of like my best memories. Like this is the only fun I had as a kid, so I really felt the need to touch on that. Yeah, but I had two siblings, two step siblings at the time that I had great relationships with. My other two step siblings were a bit older and were like having kids and moving out and doing their own thing by this time. So yeah,
You were at the end of that.
so I left Kevin, and maybe I shouldn't have said his name. Actually, I think he passed away a few years ago. Yeah. Well, there's a lot of people that have passed away. Like I know when I got home from prison, there were so many people that passed away when I was in prison. It's like, oh my gosh, it was just insane. And I would say so I got with a little while later, like I started working at a bar and dating another alcoholic and another cokehead. He was a cokehead too. And those years were kind of a blur for most of it. I did a whole lot of drinking. I started a whole lot of cocaine. I shot up for the first time.
Shot up.
Cocaine.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Same.
shot up
Okay.
cocaine for the first time. That became a typical thing, but then I was like where I had bruises all over. Like I'm that person, like I don't really have veins, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I bruise really easily, so I had bruises all over, and my boss came to me and was like, "Bro, like get some help and your job will be waiting for you."
Yeah.
And so I left for a couple of months, and I asked my mom for help, and I locked myself in my room for a couple of weeks, and I gave her my phone, and I only left my room to eat and use the bathroom, and it was rough, but I cleaned up some. I wasn't doing cocaine anymore, and I did go back to that job. My boss was great. I was a manager at the time when I had to take my leave of absence, and he made me come back as a server, but within a couple months I was back to being a manager. And I left that dude, of course, because he didn't want to get clean with me, right?
Yeah.
He wasn't working, so I'm making all this money at this bar, and he's not working, but he's riding around snorting all my coke and smoking all my weed while I'm at work, and I just wasn't freaking having that no more.
Yeah.
And he was a horrible alcoholic, like, was getting to the point where he was incoherent all the time and didn't make any sense, you
Yeah.
know? Like,
Yeah.
so it just got bad. And so we split up, and then I took my leave of absence. I detoxed myself, and then I went back to work at the bar, but then I'm drinking. I'm drinking while I'm at work, and I was still smoking weed, whatever. And I ended up reconnecting with a guy from high school who ended up becoming my son's dad. But I reconnected with him. That was, I swear, my son and his little brother Charlie were the only damn good things to come out of that relationship. But when we got together, like, he seemed so great, right? He seemed so great. He was responsible. He had a house. He was taking care of his little brother, like raising his 15-year-old brother, who was my little brother's best friend, right? So, like, I
Yeah.
knew this kid, right? And he was raising him. He had a job, he had a home, like, he was holding it down, he had a vehicle. And as soon as we get together and we move to a different house, and now I'm mama, like, I'm helping raise Charlie. And then I got my little brother and some of his insane little friends coming through the house all the time. And but then I'm working, he's working, I'm working late hours. So then he tries to stay up and wait for me to get off work. Well, then I get off so late, then he don't want to get up and go to work, and he works in the refineries. And so then he gets laid off. Then he takes 2 months to look for another job. All of that snowballed into me working 3 jobs and like 90 hours a week, trying to hold down
Wow.
the house. And I ended up I ended up pregnant. And you know what? Like, I totally glazed over. I did have another relationship. It was very short. It was 2 months, and I got pregnant. By the time we found out I was pregnant, he had already broken up with me, was back with his ex-girlfriend. And as soon as I told him I was pregnant and we found out and I told him and whatever, I miscarried. Flipping back to when I was with my son's dad, we found out I'm pregnant. And at this same time, like, his mom had gotten out of prison, and her and her boyfriend, whatever, were in and out of our house all the time. His little sister smoked dope. She was in and out of our house all the time. And I'm working these 3 jobs trying to hold it down, and I miscarried. That
So,
happened.
but that was your boyfriend's mom?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
my
Okay.
boyfriend's mom. But that whole situation was just so much, it was just chaos and crazy. Like,
Yeah.
I think that Charlie and I, the little brother and I, kept each other sane through that because, like, we were both trapped in this house of chaos, right? And, he used to tell me, like, that when his mom was gone, I was the closest thing to a mom he had.
Yeah.
And but anyway, so I disconnected from kind of all of it. I still worked. I was like a worker drone. I just worked and I came home and I cleaned and I cooked and whatever. But I disconnected emotionally and mentally from everything that was going after that second miscarriage. I was just,
Yeah.
and then he wanted to try again. I didn't really have the desire to do that.
When you say he, do you mean?
Yeah, my son's dad, my
Okay.
boyfriend at the time, he wanted to try again. I
Okay.
really
Gotcha.
wasn't, I felt like it was too soon, whatever, but lo and behold, I do end up pregnant again. However, we don't know this yet. We don't know this yet, and it is Thanksgiving, and it was the first time I was ever gonna cook Thanksgiving dinner in my own home, right? And
Yeah.
I'm like doing it up like 3 different pies, all made from scratch, all the sides, turkey dressing, ham, like our whole 6-seater table was covered in food. I mean, I cooked for like 3 days.
Yeah.
And so my dad had gone to see his family at the time, and I decided not to go. Well, at this time, my little sister's best friend was living with my mom because her dad was beating her. And so she called me and asked if she could come and stay at my house for a couple of days during Thanksgiving. And I told her, yeah, no problem. Love to have you. My mom came over for Thanksgiving dinner. His mom came over. His sister came over. We had a house full. And then in the middle of the night, I remember I fell asleep. My mom brought some laundry over because her dryer wasn't working. So I was drying clothes for her. And like ours was kind of rickety. So at some point, that dryer just gave out and it wasn't drying nothing else. It was just tumbling, right? And so I was still trying to dry something. I remember falling asleep on the living room floor, and I remember being woken up at about 5 o'clock in the morning with my boyfriend's little sister walking through the house, like to the laundry room. And then I went and got in bed and I fell right back asleep. And then I was woken up an hour later, our house was on fire. So when his little sister went into the laundry room, I had a like washer and dryer, and then there was a laundry basket in between the washer and the wall. And across from it was a hot water heater. So she was pulling clothes out of the laundry basket and just throwing them on the floor. And it caught the flame from the hot water heater and it caught our house on fire.
My God.
Yeah, yeah. So that happened. So we all pack up. My little sister's best friend, everybody was fine. House was ruined. All the new furniture we had got from cons or whatever, water damaged, and we all tried to pile in and move in with my mom for a little bit while we looked for a different place. Right. So we're looking for places. My mom had just let me take over notes on this car that she had bought because she was able to fix the one that she already had and didn't want to pay a note. So I took them over, and I think it was like 2 or 3 days, maybe a week after our house caught on fire. My boyfriend gives me his little brother and my little brother a couple of somas, a 40, and the keys to my car, and they total it. I still owe like $7,000 on this car, and they total it. And then not even a week after that, I come home early and I find my boyfriend in bed with my little sister's best friend. She was 15 years old at the time. And
Sha.
that was all
Oh my God.
a month, less than a month, all that happened. I kind of lost it, but that's okay. I moved out of my mom's house. I moved in with a friend of mine. I would refer to her while I was pregnant. I was like, "This is my baby daddy." She was great. But I moved in with her. Of course, broke up with him. Did the whole kind of pregnancy alone-ish. I had some great friends. I had some people that even though I quit talking to them through these bad relationships and whatever else. When I'm doing good, they come around. You know what I'm saying? When
Yeah.
I'm doing good and I reach out, they're like, "What's up? We missed you." And so I moved in with her. I did, the pregnancy, like I said, alone-ish. I had friends help me buy furniture. They helped me paint furniture and decorate a bedroom at her house. I had one friend who was my Lamaze coach. He was in the room with me when I gave birth. We still talk to this day. Matter of fact, my son's birthday was like, he still calls him every year on his birthday, or at least shoots him a text and tells him happy birthday. So I do have like good people in my life that have always been there.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just didn't. I mean, I get it, man. They had to be like, bro, you got an arm's length.
Yeah.
But the birth of my son was the beginning of my real issue with opiates. So when he was first born, and this is like I turned 24 right after he was born.
And this is this would be your second child?
No, he's my first child. This
Oh,
is
okay.
2 miscarriages in him. So my third pregnancy. Yeah, first child.
Gotcha.
So I don't know what at that time, I mean, I smoked some weed, and drank from time to time, but was relatively living a normal life for me,
Yeah.
like I was adulting pretty much, I paid bills at this house and was able to get him furniture and all that stuff. But that first year that I had him, I don't know, like my immune system kind of just crashed. And I was in the hospital 3 times. And every time I go to the hospital, this doctor would give me like Nubane and, like that good cough medicine with the codeine in it,
Yeah.
Tussin and that kind of stuff. And that kind of started it. Well, then a couple years later, I met someone who taught me how to doctor shop in Houston.
Mm.
And so someone taught me how to find your doctors, how to find your pharmacies, and so I started doing that, and then I started selling pills for a long time. And of course, the friend that was like that I called my baby daddy the chick I lived with when, me and his dad split up, called CPS on me. And so that ended that friendship because she thought I was back on cocaine. I wasn't. I was just on a whole lot of pills.
Yeah.
And there was a stretch of years there where I sold pills and I doctor shopped and I went to several doctors a day. And I probably took anywhere from 30 to 90 Loracets a day. Yeah, it was bad. It was bad. I don't know. Only by the grace of God is my liver still functioning.
I was
Like,
gonna say.
yeah, I don't know how, and in no, I don't deserve that kind of blessing or grace or luck or whatever you want to call it, right?
Were you drinking at all either? Too?
Rarely, but when I'm on opiates, that's what it is for me.
Okay. Okay.
I usually don't occasionally drink or occasionally smoke weed, but that's not important to me.
Okay.
And so through the doctor shopping, I met my daughter's dad. Um, we kind of went I kind of left the like business partner I had selling pills and started kind of partnering up with him, and then we started dating. I ended up moving to Houston. We continued that. I got pregnant with my daughter. And this is the area where the incarceration started, but it was like little stuff, you know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
misdemeanors and tickets, but it's also he was already going through some charges from before we got together. So when she was 5 months old, he went to prison and he was sentenced to 10 years.
Mm.
So I moved from Houston back down here. It was still like running every day to doctor shop. And at that point, like I'm living with my mom, who is a CPS worker, by the way. And I have these two kids, and I'm taking a ridiculous amount of pills. And so it's too expensive, right? And doing all this running is too expensive. And the amount that I'm taking is too expensive. And it also got harder. Pharmacies started cracking down. They started
Mhm.
linking pharmacies together and all that stuff, and it was cutting into my profit, you know what I mean? I moved
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
to using Dilaudid, and if you, let me just say this, I don't know one person that actually eats Dilaudid, right?
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. So I started shooting Dilaudid, and then before you know it, I'm doing 3 pills in one shot, and it's just getting to be a lot. And through all this, there's, minor theft charges and whatever. I'm constantly incarcerated for a ticket or a theft. I don't have a license. I don't have, um and eventually, a while later, I get with this really great guy. He was a really great guy, younger than me, really great dude. And he had $10,000 in the bank when we got together. And I put pretty much all of his money in my arm. And he was a really good dude that didn't know nothing about that kind of life. Like he smoked weed, but all the shit I was doing was, and I remember him telling me, like, bro, like you were taking me to hell with you.
Yeah.
And he was right, and he left me, and he should have left me way before that, but during the time we were together, I got a credit card abuse charge,
Mhm.
and he bailed me out or whatever, and then we broke up. And so this is where like the life of the felon begins for me, right? So
Boy.
yeah.
It starts nosediving, right?
Yes, it does. It well, first let me talk about right before this, right? My kids' daycare called CPS on me. I already had this case from this friend that had called on me that they closed. I mean, they shouldn't have, but they did. I don't know how I talked my way out of that CPS case. But, fast forward like a year later after she made that case and my kids' daycare called CPS on me. And because my mom was a CPS worker and they had to use like a retired policeman was
Yeah.
my CPS worker. And so a friend of mine had told me, like, hey, like, where are you going for your drug test? And I said, Tower Medical. And she was like, oh man, they're not going to piss test you. They're going to hair follicle you. Here, use this. And throws me some stat shampoo. So I quit drinking all this water and I do my hair like I'm supposed to and whatever. And when I go show up for the test, they pop me with both, right? I had to do urine and hair follicle. And
Oh.
so, yeah, so like a week later, this cop shows up at the house and he's like, hey, Miss Morris, we need to talk. So you passed your hair follicle but failed your urine test. Do you care to tell me how you did that? No, sir. Don't care to tell you at all. And so of course they placed my kids with my mom. I was so gone. And you know what? And after they did that, I started smoking and shooting crack too. So not
Wow.
only doing Dilaudid or whatever. And during this time too is when I got introduced to heroin. So I was shoot Dilaudid, heroin, whatever I could get my hands on, crack, whatever. My drug of choice became what you got and more. Really, really, if you want to get down to like the brass tacks of it, my drug of choice became oblivion.
Yeah.
But
Well,
whatever.
Dilaudid is the medical version of heroin anyway.
Exactly.
I
Well, no,
mean,
exactly, yeah. But, I mean, it was
so
any but you know how it is when you get on them opiates, because before I even started putting a needle in my arm with that, and I was years removed from shooting cocaine, like, it had
yeah,
been years since I'd done that, but I would get so sick not having those pills, like,
yeah,
I feel so guilty sometimes, and I thank God every day that my daughter is safe and healthy, like that she is healthy, because I took so many pills when I was pregnant with her, and I would try to wean off, but I would start having a miscarriage. And what do? They bring you into the hospital and they shoot you with morphine because she couldn't handle the withdrawals.
yeah,
And that made me feel like shit too, like, because there's already that cycle of guilt, shame, and remorse with
right,
addiction.
yeah, yeah,
There's already that cycle. And so, like, in my mind, what kind of mother, you know? And
yeah.
so then you just beat yourself down more. And then when they took my kids and gave them to my mom, I felt like when you take away a woman's kids, you take away her will to live, her reason to live, right? And
Ma'am.
so I'm grateful. Like, I'm so grateful now because my mom had my kids for years. It may not have been the best place in the world for them, right? But my mom put a roof over their head. She fed them. They had a stable place to live. They lived in that same, she's actually just now moving out of that same apartment. You know what I'm saying? So
Mhm.
they had the same address they would have went through hell with me. And I say it may not have been the best place, but I say that because I can't live with my mama. I love my mama, but
Yeah,
I can't live with my mama. I'm sure the kids feel much different about
yeah,
that. But
yeah.
um, but she stepped up, and one of my little sisters, both of them, but really one of them really stepped up, but I'll kind of touch on that in a minute. Yeah. So, yeah, so I'm doing so much drugs, like it's not even funny. This boyfriend has broke up with me. I'm fucking homeless now. Going from like trap house to trap house. And I had this buddy who, I mean, he smoked crack, whatever. He had this trap house, and, he let me crash there for weeks at a time, whatever. And I remember sitting there, and I remember like getting this cold sensation all over, right? And being like, what the fuck are you doing? Like,
Mhm,
I was in a house with people I didn't like, doing a drug I didn't like.
mhm,
And I got these two babies that were just crying for me not to leave them
mhm,
because all they wanted to do was play.
mhm,
But I had to go get high, you know? And I remember being like, that's it. That's it. I'm not doing this shit no more. This is it. But when when it got passed to me again, I did it again.
mhm,
And that's when I think I realized on some deep level that I needed no human,
mhm.
like that no human could help me. And and kind of that, that thing that the same mind that got me here cannot get me out. But I was kind of raised in the church, and but my mom, the religion that my mom beats over my head with her Bible is quite different from what I believe and what I have found spiritually, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
But at that time, you didn't know how to get there.
well, yeah, yeah, and I think
I mean, I know what you're talking about, like, you were at a crossroads, but you didn't know how to get there.
yeah, and I think if you would have asked me at that time, do you believe in God? Maybe, maybe not. But it's funny because I just was like, God, if you're real, then please fucking help me.
Yeah.
Please fucking help me. And And I'm in it with every fiber in my being. But I don't know if anyone else out there's higher power works the way my higher power works, but he got jokes.
Oh, God.
He got jokes, and how he decides to answer your calls for help are never the way you imagine them in your mind. So I had a friend call me and say, "Hey, I'm moving back in with my husband. I got to go get all my stuff from my ex-boyfriend's house. You know, we'll buy you some dope and pay you this if you'll go out there and help him move all the stuff." So I go to Louisiana, cross state lines, and go help this guy. And we are loading up this trailer. And then I realized we are not getting just our stuff. We are robbing this fucking place, right?
God.
But I wanted dope. I didn't care. So 1 week to the day after I called out to God for help, I ended up in a jail in a different state where I knew nobody. They had church in there pretty often, but they had NA meetings in there like every single week. And so I started going, right? Because at first, man, I think it was 10 days before I even felt human again, detoxing. There was this little old lady in there that made me get up and eat, made me get up and shower, made me a cup of coffee every day and made me drink it, made me drink water, you know? And she told me when I finally got up on that 10th day and tried like walking around and sitting in the day room and stuff, she said, "Honey, I never understood why they called it kicking the habit till I watched you." I said, "Yeah, good to know, glad I could clear that up for you, you know?" So I remember me and this little old lady were sitting there and we were drinking. She gave me a cup of coffee and we were drinking coffee and we were talking. And another lady said something in the day room. And I don't even remember. She wasn't talking to me and I don't even remember what it was she said now. But whatever that statement was, a light bulb went off for me. What you were doing is not working. Now's the time to try something else.
Mhm.
So in Louisiana, they do like these PR bonds and stuff like that. And so, of course, when I got locked up, who do I call? My daddy. I call my daddy. So I called my dad, and I was there for a couple of weeks, and then he came to visit me, and I told him about the PR bonds. As it would have turned out, I would only need like $30 per charge to get out, so $90, and I could go home. And
Mhm.
my dad came to see me, and I told him. He said, "So about your bonds?" And I said, "Nope, nope, nope. I don't want to. Don't tell me. Don't tell me because, Dad, if I get out right now, I'm gonna hit that street looking for dope, and I don't want to know." And my dad was like, "That's great because I was going to tell you that I was going to help you by not helping you." And he said, "But what do you need?" And I said, "In a book, a recovery Bible, and some money for some coffee." And he said, "Okay." And he did. He sent me those books and I started like going, like I had already been to a couple of NA meetings since I've been there,
Mhm.
but I really started sitting down and reading that book, and I found myself in that book, right? It told me about the things that I tried to, I tried moving to Houston. I tried moving to Tyler. I tried, like these couple when my son was first born, I tried moving to Austin. We lived there for like a year. I tried moving to all these different places, but of course, no matter where I went, there I am. I bring myself with me, right?
Yep. Geographical cure.
Or relationships. I hopped from relationship to relationship. And, there was no job, there was no car, there was no home, there was no man, there was no place
Mm.
that could fix the broken pieces. Try as I might, right? So, like, one of those things that you learn in there, I'm the fucking problem.
Right.
Like, I'm fucking broken. I'm the problem. So,
It's not out there. It's in
it's here.
here.
Yeah, here
Yeah.
and here.
Yep. Yep.
And so let's see. I'm in there for these charges, and then everybody's trying to scare me. Like, I figured I would take probation, but I've got that charge for the credit card abuse in Texas. So I've got to be here, and then they've got to extradite me to Texas. And I actually signed for 3 years probation in Texas. And then they extradited me back to Louisiana so I could sign for 18 months probation in Louisiana. They gave me time served with 18 months probation. They dropped a couple of my smaller charges and I pled out to a simple burglary.
Mhm.
And I remember feeling pretty confident while I was in that jail, right? And then the minute I stepped out, I was like, I need a meeting. Like, like I'm
Mhm.
losing my shit, right? Because I don't know how to live like clean. Not really.
Yeah.
I hadn't really ever been clean since I was 12 years old.
Well, it also sounded to me from you telling your story from an outsider looking in, it also sounds like you were a workaholic too. Like you tried to escape by I mean, I was too. So I was a workaholic too. Like if I didn't want to deal with stuff, then I would try to escape by working all the time too.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what? I totally glazed over this part. So when they first called CPS on me, when the daycare did, and this was like a couple of years before this, they sent me to rehab. I had to go to an inpatient rehab in Houston. And I I snuck Suboxone into the rehab after I'd been there almost a month, and I snuck Suboxone into the rehab and got caught with it, and they let me make it. They let me make it on that. But then this girl, we had like this pantry where your people could bring you stuff, and my dad and my stepmom, man, drive all the way to Houston from down here, sit through a 2-hour group just to get to visit with me for 30 minutes, bring me money, cigarettes, and food and shit, and then supportive, right? And, they had this girl, they brought me these certain kind of noodles that I like, right? The ones that are in the little tray thing. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I like those. And I go into the pantry and there's this girl eating the noodles. Now we see what everybody has in their box all the time. So bitch, I know I'm the only one that has these in their box. And I said, "Are those my noodles?" She's like, "Yeah, I'm eating your noodles." And what, bitch? And I punched her in the fucking face. And this just so happened to be on the same day, the same day that they caught me with the Suboxone, so that didn't go over well. They ultimately kicked me out. Um, so then from there it was family drug court. And I was in family drug court for maybe 3 months. I was going to NA meetings while I was there, but I think I probably faked it for about 2 months or something. I think I stayed clean maybe 2 months and faked it for 2 months, and then they kicked me out of family drug court, and they told me I couldn't live at my mom's with my kids anymore, and that's what led to all the trap houses and stuff I just told you in those incarcerations. But overall though, I went to county jail like 27 times. I'm that person that knows the commissary schedule in their county jail so well. I'm like, bruh, I better get in trouble on Tuesday or Wednesday so I can order commissary and it be for real. Like, I knew Jefferson County that well. These people in there know me that well. Like Morris, you're here again.
Look,
Yeah, yeah. There wasn't no ish in that time. It was pure insanity and chaos, and I brought it everywhere. I was Hurricane Station. I'm taking y'all down with me. And that's really how it was. So anyway, I'd already had that introduction to NA. So the meetings that I started going to and kind of just really stirred something because when I was there before, I wasn't trying to hear none of that shit. Right.
right, yeah.
And also, I was gonna pick apart the rehab and anything that they said and whatever. So I got kicked out of family drug court, couldn't be around my kids, ended up going to jail in Louisiana. By some miracle, I ended up signing for probation in both places. And I spent like 60 days in there, 65 days, something like that. And so I was telling you that I had a little sister that really stepped up, and that's my little sister Lindy. Man, she has really stepped up in my life for me, for my kids, for my mother. But I called her and she left Texas and drove all the way to come pick me up. I went to a meeting that night and I kept going, and I stayed around for about a year and 9 months. I was clean, I was doing well. I did the things they told me to. I got a sponsor, I worked steps, I got a job working for somebody in my group that owned a construction company, so I did some drywall and some painting for him, and he taught me a lot about doing all that. He taught me a lot about recovery, and he taught me a lot about spirituality,
Mhm.
and, it was a great place for me, and I met somebody there who was a coworker, and he was like, "Hey, like, I do iron work usually," and so when he left that company to go do iron work again, he had the boss wreck me out, and I started doing iron work, and I loved it, right? But that's also plant life and it's long hours. So eventually I quit going to meetings. I quit praying every day. I quit doing all the things. And then I got the boyfriend and then I got the place and then I quit going to meetings. I was clean for about a year and 9 months. And then I had a needle in my arm again.
Mm.
And since the absolute queen of self sabotage, right? I
Mhm.
decided to do all that right when I'm about to get off probation.
Lord.
Right when I'm about to get off probation. So I end up in I end up, of course, incarcerated again. And then that was my first trip to Safe P. So I went to Safe P at the Halbert unit in Burnett, Texas. I was there for 6 months.
And for people who don't know, what is safety?
Oh, so that is substance abuse felony punishment. It is
Okay.
a prison rehab.
Okay.
So, yeah, so I did that. I was there for 6 months and then I went to a halfway house in Bryan College Station and I came back. I did okay for a little while, and I think around that time, my best friend passed away. Sometime later, my best friend passed away and I wasn't too stable yet, and I went out again, and I went to a place called the Women's Center, which was like a restitution center. Actually, I'm sorry, that's backwards. I messed up on probation. They sent me to the Women's Center first.
Okay.
I got out of the Women's Center. I was out for a few months, didn't even finish their aftercare, relapsed. By this time I was seeing somebody else and of course he's ends up being a heroin addict too, right? So I get out of the women's center. I've kind of got my stuff together a little bit, but it doesn't stay that way long. I relapse after just a couple of months before I'm done with their aftercare. Then they send me to safety.
Okay.
So then I do that, and then I go to the halfway house, I come home, I hold it together very shakily for a little bit, but I'm back with this dude, right? Like the guy that I was still with him that whole time, right? And he and I were both like in and out of jail and prison, and it was very toxic and it was hell really because we loved each other as much as we were able to
Yeah.
in that, but we were not good for each other. We could never get on the same page and we were never going to leave each other, but we were never going to stay sober together either.
Yeah.
Man, I feel like I probably should have written this out better. So when I was in that rehab, I got sent to MHMR and I was
Which is
well, Spindletop, it's a mental health outpatient
okay.
state ran.
Okay.
So I went there and I was like grossly misdiagnosed
Okay.
and grossly mismedicated. And I knew that. I knew that this is not what's wrong with me. And this medication is not right for me.
Mhm.
And I think through that time, like that played a role in me relapsing as well. There were other factors, but that is one that I definitely want to touch on because that's a part of my story too. Through all these times in sobriety and things like that, like and being clean and working steps and whatever, I would always try to like talk to a doctor and be like, hey, like this isn't right and this isn't working. And ultimately I'll always relapse. And I don't want to always say it was because I was mismedicated and I would stop taking, but then I would self-medicate. But it was definitely a contributing factor. It just wasn't always the only factor, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I will say, and just to interject, if you are using, it's best to stop and then get diagnosed.
They have me
because
diagnosed with
you
not being
can
in
be,
rehab.
yeah, because you can best be properly diagnosed
Correct. And
when
they had
you're,
me I'm sorry,
yeah.
go ahead, babe.
No, I'm just saying you
Yeah,
can
no, and
better,
they had me diagnosed in rehab, but let's be honest, you need, like, a month or 2 to
you're
level
right.
out.
Okay, so we're going to stop the episode here with Stacia, and we will continue next week with part 2. But I want to point out that she was nervous at the beginning of this episode, and she got quite comfortable. And so, for those of you out there who struggle with anxiety and panic attacks and all that kind of stuff, I just want to share with you that you're not alone. A lot of us deal with that kind of thing. And when we're together in this community, it helps. And so after a while, she was free to express herself and begin sharing her story. And the more that she was able to open up, she just she just went all at it, and it ended up being 2.5 hours. So I just wanted to point that out, because it really is a testament to her, and she really has turned her life around. And another thing is, it has taken me months to get this episode to you, and I have been keeping her updated throughout the process, and she has been very gracious and patient and trusting with me. And so I want to give her kudos for that, and to get this episode to you. So thank you, Stacia, for allowing me to have the time to get your episode out here to everyone, to get the message across. So anyway, this is part 1. Next week, we will continue with part 2. And so stay tuned, and thank you for staying with us. See you next week.